Today we're talking all things 12 volt. Now it's got to be one of the more confusing parts of any four-wheel drive build. I only want to run it for 10 minutes, so I'm not going to use much battery power. Why am I going to need a 200 amp battery?
So you might not own the car. Might be a company car. That's a really good option for cars that you're not allowed to really modify.
And if you get it wrong, well, it can be quite an expensive mistake. So we're going to cut through all the things you need to know to make sure we take a real deep dive into 12 volt systems for your rig. I decided to actually fly down to Adelaide to go to Redarc HQ and catch up with my good mate Steve.
There's a couple of steps in getting the right gear for your 12 volt system. And the first thing you should look at is picking the right battery. There's two types of batteries you should be looking at, an AGM or a lithium.
AGM versus lithium. Now, of course, there are so many differences between the two styles of battery. Let's start with the most obvious one, in my opinion, mate, weight.
How heavy is that one?
This one here, and look, I lifted this into this position, so I know how heavy it is. I'm not even joking. This is very heavy. It's probably around that sort of, what, 40 kilos? 30,
yeah, that one there's 36 kilos.
36 kilos, there you go.
And this 100 amp here is only 12 kilos. So
12 kilos. That's,
it's a big difference.
this one, it's actually a 120 amp hour battery, but you could count on roughly 60 usable amps out of that 120.
You can get more than 50% out of these, obviously, but that's where we start to derate that battery or start to damage the cells.
Start to damage it.
Yeah, so we're cutting life out of that battery by discharging it further than 50%.
The difference with the lithium, this is a 100 amp lithium, and how much usable amp hours have you got?
Yeah, so I'd probably keep it to about 80%, so 80 thereabouts, before you start to, again, do things to it that you don't want to do it. You can go a little further, but again, we'll try and look after our batteries. They're an investment. We want to make sure that we're not, abusing them too much.
To get the same amount of amp power, and we'll get onto that in a second, you'd need to run two of these, well, nearly 70 kilos
70 kilos
worth of battery to get the same use out of that. So it's about 6 times heavier to get the same result.
And I guess another thing to consider is the charge rate. This guy here being 120 amp hour, and it's got a recommended charge rate of between 12 and 30 amps, whereas this one's 100.
100 amps. So you can charge that one at 100 amps maximum.
Yep.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah, and with AGM, they charge sort of flat out up until about 75-80%, where they need to slow down a bit to make sure we get that last amount of energy into that battery, whereas the lithium batteries, they'll just go straight up all the way, pretty much to 100% flat out.
I used to run AGMs, and everyone did back in the day, right? Because that was all you had available. I'll get about 2 years because they're usually exposed to a lot of heat. I'm discharging them a lot. I'd run them flat often, and they don't bounce back like your lithiums do. So how long is a lithium going to last?
So if you look after it, discharge this one to about 80%, so 80 thereabouts, you'll probably get 6,000 cycles out of it.
So if you did it every single day for 6,000 days, what's that going to work out?
I don't know.
10 plus years. So you know that's going to last a long time. If you get more than 3 years out of an AGM, you're doing really well.
Yeah, so generally the discharging these to 50%, your cycle life's about 1,000. 6 times more cycles out of a lithium battery than AGM.
Wow. So it's not 6 times the price though, is it? It certainly is better value long term getting yourself a lithium if you can afford it. What should you look out for when you're buying a lithium battery?
We look at the quality of products used to make the battery. You've got the casing, ruggedized casings of good quality, the cells type themselves, using A-grade cells, things like that. You need to make sure the internal protection's there, down to the quality of the bus bars within the unit, using solid copper bus bars and things like that. You can't buy something that's really cheap and expect it to be really good.
Next, you want to think about the size of your battery. So you need to think about what devices you're going to be running and for how long.
A lot of people probably find it hard to work out how many amps a fridge or camp lights will draw. Yep. So they can't really work out what battery. So they want to stay off grid, let's call it, for 24 hours, not worry about their fridge, having warm beers, not worry about their camp lights not working as soon as it becomes night time. How many amps are they going to use in a 24-hour period if they're just running a couple of camp lights and a fridge?
Yeah, so you generally break it down into what your fridge is going to draw. Probably 50 to 60 litre fridge will probably draw on average 2 amps over an hour.
Yep.
So 48 amp hours over a 24-hour period.
Yep.
Consider your lights 2 to 4 amps each, and they're depending on how many you're running.
Yeah, and you're only going to run them
for 6 hours max, sort of thing.
Exactly right. So what are you saying? Roughly 60 amps maximum.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's going to be fine, and that's going to take you either 100 to 120 amp hour AGM down to 50% thereabouts. So you're not going to start to stress out that battery too much and reduce its life cycle.
Yep.
Your lithium's not even going to bat an eyelid at that. It's just going to be like, yeah, sweet.
Just do it all day long.
Yep.
Once you picked your battery, you can build the rest of your system around that. Try and base it off your ideal battery type though, and you can start with a smaller battery and upgrade it down the track. That way you don't have to swap out your whole system if you pick the right gear the first time round. Now you got to think about if you need an inverter. 12 volt appliances use 12 volt power direct from your battery. 240 volt appliances or your typical household appliances use this type of plug and of course need 240 volt power. An inverter converts the 12 volt from your battery into 240 volts of power so you can run these appliances.
Okay, Steve, help us choose a setup. This is what I want to run. I want to run a fridge, camp lights, and an induction cooker.
Okay, so if you want to run an induction cooker, you're going to need a 2000 watt inverter. Yep. So you have to start at a 200 amp hour lithium battery.
This is where people get a little bit confused. They're thinking, well, induction cooking is really fast. I only want to run it for 10 minutes. Why am I going to need a 200 amp battery?
Well, because you're going to need around 180 amps for that 10 minutes. And this battery just isn't designed to do that. It's rated for 100 amp continuous, whereas this one's rated for 200 amp continuous.
Yes. You're also going to need an inverter. Now, how do you pick the right size inverter?
Well, you just got to look at the largest appliance that you want to run. 2000 watts going to cover most things, induction cooking, coffee machines and things like that.
Yep.
When you step up to air cons and other things, you might need to go.
Yeah, that's usually not in the realms of most four-wheel drivers.
No, not usually.
Not usually, not usually. What if your biggest 240 appliance is something like a laptop or charging some drone batteries or, you know, basic stuff like that? What would you?
So basic stuff, you can just run something like a small 350 watt inverter. So one of the smallest ones gives you enough to keep many of those smaller appliances running absolutely fine.
There's no need to pay for stuff you don't need. If you just think, oh, well, we may as well get the biggest and the best of everything, but you're not actually utilising it, it's a bit of a waste of money.
And it is a massive step up from 350 watt inverter to a 2000 watt inverter as far as dollars go.
Yeah,
because your whole system has to change. So.
Now you got your battery sorted, it's time to choose the right charger. Here's how to choose the right one and not waste any money.
So when you look at an actual charger itself, it actually does a couple of different jobs. The charger, of course, as the name sort of suggests, will charge your auxiliary batteries up. That's its main function. But you want to also make sure it can do some other things as well. So number one, isolate your auxiliary batteries from your start battery. That way when you say you use all of your battery power when you're out camping, you don't actually flatten your start battery, so you can always start your car in the morning. That's really important that they do that. You should also check that they can be a solar regulator as well, so you can also have an input for solar. You might want to add solar to your setup, and I suggest you do. It's always a great thing to harness the power of the sun to keep those batteries topped up. Now typically, and this is no hard and fast rule, but if you've just got a single battery in the back of your car, maybe 100 amp, even lithium, something like this 25 amp charger will do the job fine. It's going to charge, of course, 25 amps per hour, so it'll take you about 4 hours from a dead flat battery to get full again. That's a pretty decent charge rate. At the end of the day, your charger really is the heart and soul of your 12 volt setup. And I think where a lot of people let themselves down is they get the wrong size charger. And it doesn't matter how much battery capacity you have, if you can't get enough charge to it, it's almost pointless. So let's start with a real basic charger. What would you know, I'm a weekender, I want to go away, run a fridge, and that's about the size of it. What sort of charger would you recommend?
Yep, so just for a standard charger, I would probably just look at a BCDC 1225, say a classic if it's under the bonnet or in the engine bay, because it's protected from the elements, absolutely perfect for that. And then if it's going in the cabin of the vehicle, you don't have to get the classic, you can get the core, which has the ruggedization removed from it, which takes a lot of cost out of the product. So it gets you into the market.
That's clever.
Of a good charger at a better price.
If you did have 200 amps of battery, say, in your rig, what do you reckon the ideal charger would be?
I'd say a minimum probably 50 amp because that's a nice sweet spot. It's not too much for most vehicles alternators to handle, and it's going to give you 4.5 hours worth of charge from dead flat, and you're going to be full.
I think a lot of people don't realise that bigger is not always better, just in chargers as well. Well, you said a key point there, make sure your alternator can handle that.
Let's say you've got a charger like the Alpha, but you can't afford to get a battery that can handle a 50 amp charge.
Right.
That's fine, because the Alpha you can actually adjust the input charge or the output charge to make sure that's going to suit your battery.
And when the budget can afford more batteries or a bigger bank, you can increase that, and you've already got the right charger to begin with.
Yeah, that's right. You're future-proofing yourself by buying a charger that has more features that'll do you well down the track.
Now, ultimately, it's going to come down to you and your particular setup, but here's a couple other things you probably should consider.
You also got to think about whether you want to mount your system or whether you want it to be portable. You're going to want to decide between a battery box that you can take with you or a mounted system set up in your rig.
All right, Steve, let's talk about mounting your 12-volt system, because there's so many different ways you can do it. Obviously, it's very common to have a hardwired system. So let's talk about those ones first, where you basically hardwire your system in. What's the benefits of that?
I think the benefits are, it's sort of you set and forget. You put it in, you do it, you know everything works, you know everything is, you don't have to touch it.
One of the other benefits of having a hardwired system is you can add to that system later on as well. So, you know, if you want to run, say, an inverter down the track, you want to run 240-volt appliances, that's probably your best bet is hardwiring. For those people that don't want a hardwired system, the alternative, I guess, is using something like a humble battery box.
Yeah, spot on. So you might not particularly own the car, you know what I mean? It might be a company car. You're not allowed to go ahead and drill holes and cut things out. Battery boxes are great for that. That's a really good option for cars that you're not allowed to really modify. By no means is it just away you go, like you got a battery box and everything's fine. You'll still need to get power to it.
Yeah.
Be it in the vehicle or at home somewhere, it needs to charge. So you're going to deplete the charge, you have to put the charge back in. Most common thing to do would probably be put a BC-DC charger on the box, run a cable from your start battery to charge, or solar as well, and then all good. But there's a little bit of wiring involved, but you're not really interfering with the vehicle or making severe modifications.
I guess the Go block is another option as well, where fundamentally you've got yourself a 100 amp hour battery, a 50 amp charger, all wired together in one handy little portable case.
It's got everything you need. It's got all your connections. Like you say, it's got the 100 amp battery, the 50 amp charger, and it only weighs like 18 kilos or something like that. So.
Yeah. In fact, I run that exact setup. You guys would have heard me talk about it before, but I run that in sooty. It did everything I ever needed to do. Like ran my fridge, ran my lights, charged batteries. I use it as my whole 12-volt system, and I've never once needed to change it out.
The limitations of the battery boxes are their size. So if you're only running 100 amps, you know, you might get away with a 1000-watt inverter on this guy. But yeah, if you want to run 2000 plus, you're going to need a bigger battery bank, and you're not going to be able to do that in a portable setup.
No.
Solar is great if you're planning on staying out bush, but how much you need depends on how much power you're using. Around 150 watts is a great starting point, and that'll most likely run a basic fridge. 200 to 300 watts is a sweet spot. Now that's going to run your fridge, but also make sure your batteries are completely full at the end of each day, assuming you get a bit of sun. And anything above that is for huge off-grid stays or way bigger systems. A really good guide that I use is to try and match the amount of watts of solar you need to the amount of amp hours of battery you have. So for instance, if you've got 200 amps of lithium, try and have 200 watts of solar. Just keep in mind you won't get full output all day, so it's always worth going a bit bigger if you can. Mounted panels are a set and forget option, and they also charge while you're driving, but you can't escape the shade without moving your whole setup and take up premium space on your roof. Whereas blankets are great because you can move them out into the sun while your car is parked in the shade. But of course they take a bit more effort to set up. Ideally, if you can run both, that's the best of both worlds.
Solar. When should you consider adding that to your 12-volt system?
If you've got a fridge in your car that you never want to turn off, and you've got space on your roof, put a solar panel up there. 120 watts going to look after your fridge, no worries.
Now, at the best optimal sun, how many amps would you get back into your battery?
Optimal sun, clean panel. You're sitting there, you can look at it, you can get around 8 to 10 amps out of it, depending on what it's doing with the MPPT, because that'll vary as well. Give you the most out of your panel running through a BC-DC charger. I've got a 150 on the Hilux, 60 litre fridge. I've never turned that fridge off, even when I park it up for weeks at a time. Then you can always run extra inputs as well, so you can have a fixed panel and you can parallel Anderson plug into that and then run a blanket or something like that. And definitely having something to monitor it so you know exactly what you're doing, so you know what your solar is providing to you.
That's clever.
Yeah, so you know exactly how much power is going into the battery. You can see on your Red Vision or whatever you're using that the power's going up, and at this rate you're X amount of days until you're full or flat or whatever.
There's been times where I've been running multiple fridges in really hot conditions up in the top end, where I park the vehicle up for a week and I'll run one of these blankets in addition to my fixed solar panel, and together I'm always at 100% battery and I don't need to stress about 12 volt anymore.
It's so good. You just go off, do your thing, come back, and everything's where it should be.
Yep. Now, are there any key differences between the solar that you're going to get out of a fixed panel compared to a blanket?
Yeah, it's more just practicality, where you've got different solutions for different problems. So if you've got space on your roof and you can use it, why not put a fixed panel? It's up there, you've forgotten about it. Or even when you're driving and it's sunny, it's going to be using that power to supplement into your BCDC charger, take a bit of strain off your alternator and things like that. So it's a really good thing just to keep it going.
Now, what are some of the most common mistakes you see?
Most common mistakes is going to be undersized cable.
Yeah.
Using cable that's too thin for the job and expecting it not to get hot.
Yeah.
But without the understanding, it's a fair enough assumption that it's going to be a mistake that's made.
And let's face it, like good automotive cable is quite expensive.
It's not cheap,
and
right.
Especially when you go up in sizes, which you need for high draw appliances, or you got big chargers, you're going to need pretty fat cable. A lot of people probably try and skimp a little bit because you're like, oh, well, that one is a lot more expensive. This one, I think I'll be right.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a really bad idea to use undersized cable. So another big problem I see is people not fusing cables. Not only putting a fuse on, but putting a fuse on the right place.
Yeah.
So as close as possible, obviously, to the power source. So then that line of cable is protected if you get a short circuit.
Of course, yeah. And what we're playing with here, guys, as well, these mistakes have all got the potential to burn a vehicle to the ground. So I guess the stakes are quite high when you talk about 12 volt. You get it wrong, you can, it's going to be pretty bad. It's going to wreck your holiday. There's no doubt about that. What about people, wasting money? You would have seen that, buying the wrong thing.
Yeah. I bought this, but it's not doing what I thought it was supposed to do. Like, just do a bit of research beforehand. Make sure that you, like we've been speaking about this whole time, getting the things that you need to do the job.
So I guess what you see a lot is people, when it comes to the install of their system, so they get all the components, they try and put it together in their rig, they make a lot of mistakes, then they're going to have, potentially a fire hazard, but, at best case scenario, they're going to have an unreliable system that's going to let them down a heck of a lot.
Yeah, that's the other thing is connection quality. So, to make all these connections and crimp things right, you need the right tools.
Yep.
And they're not cheap either. And if I'm doing it once, I'm not going to want to go buy a tool.
Yep.
Like I'll probably go buy a tool because I like buying tools.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good excuse.
but not everyone's going to want to do it.
No, and the know-how as well. It's a very specialised trade. Not everyone has the skills to go and play with 12 volt. That's that makes sense. Now, one thing that you guys have recently brought to the market, which I think is really, really cool, and it takes all that guesswork out for the average punter, are these Redarc panels. Now, can you explain how these work? These are really cool.
So we've come with a tiered approach sort of thing, from low use to high use, with the Scout and the Nomad and the Pioneer, which is the one I think you've got in Sweden.
In the Dirty 30.
In the Dirty 30.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Yep, I've just installed it. It's so easy. Even I can do that one, mate.
Yeah, and it's literally positive and negative from the start battery, positive and negative to your auxiliary battery, and we've taken care of the rest of it.
Yeah, and that's, I think for most people as well, mate, when you firstly go out and purchase all the gear you need, and then you go and spend all the money on all, your wire, your lugs, your right terminals, and then you've got to have the know-how to do it as well. This just takes the guesswork out. You know that as soon as you put power to this, it's going to work, and it's going to work every single time. And that reliability is something that a lot of people, I think, will be very excited about.
Yeah, I think it takes the pain points out of the whole dual battery. It sort of demystifies it for you. It simplifies it in the fact that you don't have to think too much. You need to go onto our website and go, I need X amount of power and I want to run X amount of accessories. What do I need? Yep. And we'll tell you which panel you need.
Which panel. So again, you're going to cover all the bases when it comes to dual battery setup. So this one here has got a core 25 in it. Something like this, is a basic one. It's going to charge at 25 amps. And then what you move up to the 40.
Yep, so then you can do a 40, and this one has its own accessory fuse box for running other loads.
And then right up to, I guess that one's got a 50 amp alpha in it, so that's more of a high end.
Yeah, so that one's going to be a bit more costly, but it's going to be able to do higher battery capacities and things like that as well. And they all provide you with battery monitoring, so you know what your batteries are up to.
Yeah, that makes it easy, doesn't it? So all of your inputs, like, for this one at least, Anderson plug, so you get all your loads. If you want it on the fridge or something like that, you just chuck it straight into an Anderson plug. Into that.
And others, like I said, have the fuse box, so you can run more individual circuits, lighting, other things like that. For
install, a positive, a negative in, and a positive and negative to your auxiliary batteries, and you are done.
Yep, you can't get it wrong.
Well, there you go. Hopefully that's covered a lot of the confusion around 12 volt systems, and you've walked away from this video understanding exactly what you need for your particular vehicle. It's going to suit your needs perfectly. But of course, if you've got any questions, put them down in the comments below. We love hearing from you guys. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'll see you next time at Full Drive 24/7.